A lot of people say that that is the most important part of the animation process. It's definitely the most fun part, that's for sure, because that's the stage that's really, really loose, and you can come up with all sorts of ideas and change them at any moment, and not have to suffer all the consequences of wasting a whole lot of time. So, who can tell me what the most important part of animation storytelling is? Anybody? Plot. Story. Yeah, exactly. Story. That's the most important part. Pixar always says story is king, and everything they do always goes back to the story. Why are we doing this? Why do the characters look like this? Well, that's because it pertains to the story and what you're trying to convey to the audience. The theme, the mood, emotion, all of it goes back to, well, what is this about? Why is this so important that we have to animate this? So, basically what you do is you write your story. I'm pretty sure everybody here knows how to write their own story. My advice to you is to make it simple. Make it as simple as possible, because with animation, normally those feature films are beautiful and vast and they have all these worlds and everything, but sometimes you don't realize that there are hundreds of people working on that movie. And so when you want to make your own cartoon, you kind of have to think about what your limitations are, and that's time. So keep it short, keep it simple, and say it out loud. When you come up with the idea, just tell it to friends, and then you'll realize, oh wait, that doesn't sound good at all. When you say it out loud. So, and always take advice from your friends. They're really, really good about, telling you face value. Hey, that's not really a great idea. Maybe you might want to change that. And so after that, you come up with a storyboard. And how you make a storyboard is you divide your story into beats. So those are all of the main actions. And basically, when you have those beats, you kind of think about like a song. A song has its slow moments, its fast moments, really loud moments, and really, really quiet moments. So you want to have an animation that has a lot of rhythm to it. So it's not all slow, not all fast, not too serious, not too well, funny. Everyone loves funny, so. But you just really, really want it to be entertaining. And so once you have that series of events, you can break that up into drawing them out into your boards. And your boards you divide up into your environments. So where is your character? And you can, like say for example, I have my story about this girl who's in a forest and she's lost, and so you have your environments of, oh, she's in this part of the forest, she's in the clearing, she's above the forest, she's back at home, and then you divide those settings into smaller events that go into that. And then you go into your design after that storyboarding phase. And so I suggest that you also keep your character design simple, because whether you're animating it in 3D or you're drawing it in 2D, the great thing about animation is that you can go really, really simple for clarity's sake. It doesn't have to be like real life, and that's a great thing. So yeah, and always make everything pertain to the story in terms of the design. So for my senior film, it was called Olive, and it was about a little girl who was lost in the forest, and she's really young and innocent, so her design, I wanted her to look like an olive, basically, so everything about her was round. She had round buns in her hair, had a really, had all curves to her body and everything, just to kind of display, the youth of an olive, so. Yeah, that's it about pre-production. Do you guys have anything else to say?
So as far as writing the story, to start off with, I mean, it's one of the easiest things to say, oh yeah, write your story, make it funny. This something that's people say a lot about writing is make it honest, which means just make it something that is true to you. You can tell the same story about that some kid going to school and he hangs out with his best friend a million times, but as long as it's about some specific thing that you know about, it'll be good. Like as long as it's something that's very specific and honest to your point of view, it can be the same story that you've seen a million times, but it's with a new twist to it, some new character personality, some new twist to this whole thing. And it's all about character, it's all about the character in this story. One of the other things was this whole pre-production process is very, it can be confusing which to go first, and especially when you have a story like, I just want to start animating this thing. It's really important that you want to block everything out. Like Lane was saying, you want to have your storyboards after your story is written. Like you don't want to just start writing your storyboards and then you're like, oh, then you have to change all this stuff. You want to have the story written solidly, characters blocked in, your designs and your everything put together solidly before you want to start animating. So just plan ahead really, really well.
Are we moving on to production now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk a little bit.
I think you need to talk like right up against it. Like this? Yeah?
Yeah.
Talk up right up
Okay.
against it.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about after pre-production, right into production, and your character and environment design. We have a character designer amongst us.
Who's that? Character designer? Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
So when you're making your character designs, like Lane said, keep it simple. I do a lot of character setup on Archer, so that requires symbol-like rigging. It's like rigging a puppet, but in the computer. And what we do is make sure that it flows, the joints flow with the body. If you're going to make a character and it's as elaborate as a human being, know that it's going to take you a little bit of time to make sure that it's right. So like Lane said, definitely keep your character simple. When you're making your character designs, think about the environment that they're living in, think about how they're going to interact with others, and don't settle on your final design until you have test animated it, because a lot of things will have to change afterwards. Like if you make elaborate parts of the skin or elaborate parts of the face or the clothing, and then when you go to animate, the character design starts to break down, or you realize that animating that character will take a lot longer than you have allotted for, then you're gonna have to change that design. And if you spend all your time making the drawing all nice and pretty and you can't actually use the drawing in the end, then that time will be wasted. So when you get close to settling on a character, make sure that you test animate it first.
All right, and well, everybody is talking about how you should keep things pretty simple. And so when we're moving on to the animation part, where you're actually animating the character, you want to keep that in mind as well. Since I guess you're at a do-it-yourself panel, it means that you are doing your own projects, which is you know, a good time to kind of explore and find out what your limitations are, and you know, really kind of screw up and figure out what it is you need to do to not screw up again. So when we're going to talking about the actual animation, you also want to keep that clarity in mind. You want to realize what is important about what you drew or what you have in the storyboard and in the script, and that your character clearly illustrates that point, either through their attitude, the posture that they have, or the kind of gestures you build around that. Now, what we do in production for our television shows is that we start off by listening to the lips or the audio for it, the actor acting out the scene, and we listen to that over and over and over and over again. We find out what is important and what is being said in that scene. And first thing we do to keep the character from overacting is that we lip sync them first. We have in our builds, when we're building the characters, we have lips that mouth shapes that actually will make the ah, o, u, m, all those different sort of mouth shapes, which is something actually is kind of unique to television, I think, not so much movies, I believe.
Yeah, not in movies. Not in movies.
Not in movies. Okay.
Not in movies.
In which they have their animators actually like doing unique mouth shapes for the lip sync.
Yeah, like on Archer, we only have I think 7 mouths now.
Seven?
Seven
Yeah, right.
standard mouths.
We're at 7.
We're
at
at like
whopping 7.
12 for our flash shows. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Leica also has replacement mouths if you guys have ever seen any of those, Paranorman or Coraline, they have like, what is it, 3D print to actually have those things replaced on their faces. It's really awesome. Anyways, it's kind of the same thing. Anyways, I'll move on to talking about
Post-production.
Post-production. Here you go. I think that's
You've
gonna
done
be
your
good.
animation, and it's time to wrap it up. What are some things you do after all your drawings and your assets have been made?
Right, so you've got a pile of stuff that you've animated, some of it looks good, some of it doesn't look good. And this is kind of when you get down to what is actually working in your story. Like when you put it in your program, whatever your, like Final Cut Pro or Premiere, what is the story working or is it not? This is when you see there's a beginning, middle, and end. Are there boring parts? Are there parts that just don't work, that are weird? Or are the parts that are amazing? And I'm sure you've heard the phrase, kill your babies. It means there's these things that are your favorite things that are probably not going to work for whatever reason. And it's always sad to get rid of that stuff, and that's the most important stuff to get rid of often. It's like this one part where a character does this awesome little thing that has nothing to do with the rest of the story, but you love it, it needs to get out of there. This is also the point where you can put all your sparkle filters, all of your vignettes, all the fancy stuff you don't need. I always say don't do it, and at the same time I always do it. I always add tons of that stuff. Find some good music, find music that you can legally use. I have musician friends that I always like to work with to get good soundtracks. This is the point where you also want to get feedback from people, see if it is actually working, because before you actually finish, before you put it up on YouTube or send it out to festivals, you want to make sure that your cartoon is saying something to someone other than just you. I generally like to find 1 or 2 people that is my audience, like the person that you wrote this thing for that's laughing or that is meaningful to. Show this person that now as well. Like my daughter is my litmus right now, where if it's funny and she wants to watch it 3 times, I did a good job. So, and then if your daughter laughs at my funny hot dog cartoon, then you're done.
So let's jump into some ways that you can hack the industry standards. We have one person who does stop motion. If you guys ever want to jump into stop motion, know that the standard for the industry is that you build a large set, preferably one that's high up, because when you're doing anything with green screen, the biggest issue is your height, not your width. So people will build large rooms, and then they'll have their props set up that are really elaborate, and they'll have their lights that are coming down onto it. Generally, everyone's wearing all black so that they don't reflect on the environment. And a good way to hack that is to use the exact same thing, just smaller and cheaper versions of it. You're still going to wear all black, because that's not the expensive part, but when you get your lights, know that you can use any kind of light. If you're doing an outdoor setting, maybe you want to use a light that has a yellow tint to it, and if you're doing something that's inside, remember that fluorescent lights have a blue hue to it, so use like a desk lamp. A good way to diffuse a light is to put like a cookie sheet over it, and that'll soften it so you don't get a big spotlight on it. And when you're going to capture it, you want to use software that'll just grab anything from your images, like Movie Maker, or if you have iMovie, those will work. The industry standard is to use drag and frame. Right? That's about it. If you're gonna make rigs, make your own armature and use some Sculpey. That's like one of the soft clays that you can use to make a sturdy character.
There's also I'm sure there's an iPhone. I'm sure there's an iPhone app too. I'm a big proponent for if you have a phone that can take pictures of something, use it for stop motion if you can. I mean, You can also just take the pictures and then sequence them in After Effects really simply, or some other program. Oh, hi. Yeah, use what you've got, to make, especially with stop motion. Like, it's very simple to find some sort of toy that has a good armature that you can puppet on top of, and then take a bunch of pictures of it moving and dancing around.
Yeah, like Robot Chicken.
Yeah, like Robot Chicken.
Yeah. That's becoming a lot more popular, sorry. Yeah, it's becoming a lot more popular to use your phone instead of a large camera. You can get one of the remote picture takers for very cheap, and you can hook that up to your phone or hook that up to your computer and take the images without having to move the camera.
Alright, so we're going to jump into traditional animation. So again, how many people have done traditional 2D animation? Awesome. Alright, so for the people who are interested, who've never done it before, and have never done it before, you normally use a light table, right? When I was in school, my professor told me to turn it off, which is like preposterous. It's like, why even get a light table, right? He was pretty legitimate. I mean, he worked for Disney for several years. So I asked him, well, Professor Weber, why? Why would you, pay for this like $70 light table and not use it? And he basically told me, when you have your two drawings stacked on top of the other and you turn on the light table, you can see your two images. And so for your third drawing, it has to be somewhere in between. And when we see the two, we naturally just want to go straight for the middle, which is not really a good thing because it creates really even timing. So for example, if I draw my hand and you see the frames all by themselves, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you play it back, it just looks like this. And that looks really ugly. That doesn't look dynamic at all. It doesn't look realistic. Nothing moves just, really linearly. Everything has a curve. I'm sure all of you have taken your math classes and you've had your X and your Y axes, and you see tons of bell curves and easing in and easing out. That's the exact same thing. So basically, you would want your hand to move from the starting position here and then inch slowly and then gradually get bigger and bigger, then inch back slowly, so that your hand motion goes and slowly eases in and eases out. So yeah, that was the most important lesson that I ever learned, because I went 10 weeks without using one for the whole entire time to learn rough animation, and everything was so much more dynamic and fluid. And then, as opposed to the other animation class who needed that light table, they had a crutch now. So you really just want to trust your eye, and it'll take you a little bit longer in the beginning, but in the long run, it'll just be way, way, way better for you. And if you don't have access to a light table, basically a light table is for, it's really, really good for cleaning up all of your animation once it's done. And you want everything to be very, very precise. That's really what it's for. It's for getting those really, really rough lines to just make them really smooth and simple and readable for other people. So yeah, and if you can't afford one at home, you can just build your own. You can buy a peg bar down here, and you can buy that online, and you can buy a hole puncher as well. And just use copy paper, basically, just really thin, cheap copy paper. And all you need is just a translucent piece of glass and a box and a box and a light, and that's it. So, anybody else have anything to say?
You can also use the spiral notebooks. As long as it has an L bracket on it, then you'll be able to flip it. So, I mean, after a back-to-school sale is over, you can just grab a bunch of those, make your own, They're pretty cheap around, like, what is it, October? Yeah, right about now.
All right, so I guess we'll move on to digital 2D, which is going to be my field. I actually work in Flash mostly. I am starting to shift over to using the new industry standard, which is Harmony, Toon Boom Harmony, though it's way expensive. So if you're just starting off, I would suggest finding another route. Flash is actually a really good, starting off point. There are pretty cheap or free versions of it online. I don't know. Here are some
There are a
examples
few.
of free.
I actually wrote a little list for you guys, some free ones. Do you have a quick question? Okay. Okay. So, one of the best ones that I found online, this is the one that got the highest reviews, is Snapfig Studio, and that is SYNFIG Studio, and it's an advanced 2D animation drawing program. You can use it similar to animation in Photoshop. There is also 2P, Sketch, Pencil, and Inkscape. Those are some just to check out. They have lower reviews on them, but it just depends on which one is easier for your computer to access.
And I'm not going to tell you that it is a digital program, which means that there are torrents and stuff. But don't do that. That is bad. Don't go onto the torrent website and find free version of those.
You don't need to know
Which
about
one?
torrents.
I don't know. I've never been there. I would never do that. But really, honestly, if you are getting into a digital medium, whether it be 2D or 3D, any one of the Maya or CD4D, Cinema 4D programs, it is a really good idea to kind of base everything you have in the traditional sort of principles of animation. There are plenty of tutorials and reference material for you to find on the internet, at the library. Not the library. Who goes to the library? At a bookstore.
I go to the library.
You go to the library?
I go to the library
Go to
because
the library.
you can get access to a lot of nice equipment, especially